Hello, and thank you for joining us for this week's Thursdays at Noon community event, live community event today. Just days from going to the polls to elect Canada's 44th government, we talked to the Muskoka, Parry Sound-Muskoka candidates once again. But first, we acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe peoples in the Williams and Huron-Robinson Treaties area. We recognize the long history of First Nations and Métis people on this land and show respect to them today. We acknowledge our neighbors, the Wata Mohawks and the First Nations of Moose Deer Point, Shawanaga, Wasauksing, Magnetawan, Henvey Inlet, Nipissing, and Doquis. We're 4 days away. Advance poll voting is up more than 30%. This election is happening. The candidates have joined us for the past 2 weeks to talk about the issues and are back again today. I believe that today we have Heather Hay, who is running for the NDP, Mark Mantha from the Green Party, Jim Toole of the PPC, Jovani Nikoya-Shakiyi had said that she would be with us, but I don't see her. Sarah, do you see Jovani anywhere?
No, we do have two phone numbers though. There's area code 705 with the last three digits 675. Would it be a good time to identify callers?
Maybe. I see a Julius on the call. Now, her campaign manager is Julius. Julius, is that, do we have Jovani with you?
Yeah, Giovanni, she's on phone. Just to let you know. Maybe she will let you know there.
Okay. What are the last four numbers? Do you know the last four numbers?
766 3549.
3549. Okay.
I see it here.
Do you see it?
Yeah, 3549. Yes. That's Giovanni.
I see 564.
3549. I do see it.
Okay. All right. So I'm unmuting your phone, Giovanni. Let's see how that works. Okay. Can you say hello to us?
Bonjour. Hello, everyone. I'm Giovanni.
Thank you, Giovanni. Okay. So we have Giovanni here over the phone with us for the Liberal Party, and incumbent Scott Aitchison from the Conservative Party is not with us today. He sends his regrets, and I can tell you the question that we're asking today of each of these candidates is, what are the three top issues, do you think, in this election for Parry Sound-Muskoka? We asked that question also and published answers that were provided with us in an article. And in that question, what Scott Aitchison said was that his three top issues were housing, mental health, and broadband internet. He said he would address these issues by continuing to advocate for the investments necessary in Parry Sound-Muskoka. He suggests that the advocating will be much easier if his party is in power. And I guess that is true. And asks people to refer to their detailed plans to address the housing crisis, the mental health crisis, and commits to delivering results on expansion of accessible, reliable, and affordable broadband services in rural Canada. So that's Scott Aitchison's perspective. Let's talk to our candidates. Why don't we begin today with Mark Mantha? Mark, what do you think are the top three issues facing Parry Sound-Muskoka this election?
I just finished a virtual Meet the Candidates meetings with Humphrey Public School, and it was really such a pleasure to engage our youth in that way. And all along, the message has been very consistent. That is that, you know, I understand it. It just feels so much more comfortable to put things into silos, but it is to shift the resources from programs that cause the climate crisis to programs that save us from it. So to stimulate sustainable prosperity in all areas. So that's tourism and recreation, farming and food security, construction and housing, mental health and healthcare, and all for well-paying, stable jobs, with assurances to local and regional businesses for support. Now, there's really one particular item that it would just seem disparaging to put into a list and prioritize, and that is the 94 calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The other items, you know, for example, that were priorities for Scott, yes, housing is a big part of the conversation at the same time. And when I was speaking to those students at Humphrey Public School, I was explaining to them that if you take that one item, again, talking about the interconnectedness, if you take that one item of resolving the housing crisis, is that's going to have such a tremendous impact in relieving stress on people who are spending 70% of their income when it should be 30%. And that really causes a lot of stresses on things like food security, you know, and being able to have access to good quality whole foods that keep us healthy. And by keeping us healthy, that also reduces pressure on the healthcare system. And it's directly related to mental health issues and all the way down the line. So I can't really do a bullet list for you, but I can engage with anybody on what people are talking about out there on the doorsteps.
Okay, thank you for that, Mark. Giovanni, can you tell us what you think the three most important issues are to Parry Sound-Muskoka?
For me, the three most important issues in Parry Sound-Muskoka are the housing crisis, health issues, and the mental issues, and also the economy. So for me, housing is really one of the biggest ones, as I tried to say last time, because everybody is talking about this, but I think that we can remediate to the crisis if we work hard, and the Liberal Party, if we get elected, the government is gonna invest right away in building small houses so that anyone can afford to have a roof. And then we can also work with the municipalities and the provincial leaders and to invest in housing, building apartments so that everybody can have where to live. Health is a big priority for all of us because we are not even done with the fight against COVID-19. And so the re-elected Liberal government is going to continue that work because we have already the experience of fighting the pandemic. It's the first time. No other leaders have had such experience. And so I think that we qualified the best to do that work. And the health is really very important. It's a big priority. And mental health is also a problem here in Parry Sound-Muskoka. And last but not least, the economy. And because what I learn when I'm visiting people, when I'm talking with people here, they say that most of them have lost their jobs, and also because even though we are creating new ones, they cannot afford where to live, even though they have that job. So we will invest a lot in creating new jobs. We have already created many jobs, and they will continue to do so. So everything that we're doing, I think that most of the programs in the platform of the Liberal Party have details and concrete actions that show that we are going to invest in order to create jobs. Like, for example, the $10 daycare for everyone, young families, is going to create more jobs. And parents who had to work from home, who lost their jobs, are going to have a job, and it's going to be a very good start for our kids. And so the economy is gonna really, really, really roll back, and that's what I think that Parry Sound-Muskoka needs to.
Thank you, Giovanni. Now, Scott, we had technical difficulties last week, and I was afraid you weren't able to fully respond to Scott's concerns or when he took the Liberal Party to task. So what he said then, and what he has said at the debate as well, the Cogeco debate, is that he got into government, he ran for MP to deal with the housing in Parry Sound-Muskoka. And he expressed anger and frustration because he said the Liberal Party has done nothing. So can you share with us what the Liberal Party has done specifically in Parry Sound-Muskoka in terms of housing? Do you know, have there been housing starts that have been funded in part by the federal government over Trudeau's period in power?
Is that the question directed to me?
Directly to you, yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So I don't have a specific answer to that question, but I know that projects related to the constructions of homes is something under the those are projects under the municipality and provincial legislation. And so I met some people here who work in the construction area. They told me that they had tried to apply via the municipal government to apply to have to use the land in order to construct, to build houses, but they didn't succeed to have those that permission. And so for me, I know the federal government is not directly involved, but we can work together with the municipal leaders and provincial leaders and respond to those people, leaders in the communities, who really are the ones who see right away what are the needs for their neighbors, for everyone. And so if they have thought about such projects before and they didn't get the permission to build, that is something that the federal government can, from now, try to help solve, but it's going to be through the municipal level and the provincial level.
Okay, so Giovanni, if in the next couple of days, I realize it's a busy time, but if you are able to find out for us, the Liberals pledged, I believe, $6 billion to housing in the last government, and Scott is saying none of it came to rural Canada and none of it came to Parry Sound-Muskoka. If you are able to find hard information on that, on housing starts that the federal government supported in Parry Sound-Muskoka in the last 6 years, we would be happy to publish that information. So do let us know. So thank you for that. Let's go to Heather Hay from the NDP. Hi, Heather. How are you today?
I'm excellent. How are you today, Pamela?
I'm well, thank you. What are your three big issues?
The three biggest issues, the biggest issue I think on everyone's mind at this particular point in time is the climate emergency. It's overwhelming issue regardless of who you're talking to. We know that it's not just a crisis or a climate change, it is an emergency at this point. The NDP has a comprehensive plan for moving forward to combat climate global warming. The most pressing local issue is housing and having safe, affordable housing here in Muskoka so that we can have housing for employees and small businesses who are trying to hire more people. And the third major issue I guess if I had to kind of put it as a subset, would be poverty, and that would include access to internet and a livable wage. but the overall overarching way of how we do all three or approach all three of these has to be through a spirit of reconciliation. So I'm kind of trying to get a fourth one in there.
That's efficient politicking. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Heather. Let's go to Jim Toole. Jim, what are your top 3 issues this election?
Well, top 3 issues as I see it is number 1 would be housing. Number 2 would be the state of our public finances. And number 3 would be the COVID-19 pandemic and the government's response to it. Start with housing. The factors that are driving up the cost of housing are mass immigration to this country. So right now it's about 350,000 people per year, and the Liberals plan on raising that to 400,000 a year, and that just puts the pressure on the housing market. So we would reduce it to 100,000, 150,000 per year to reduce the demand. And we'd also try to put an end to money speculation from foreign interest, and we'd also modify the Bank of Canada inflation target from 2% to 0%, and either privatize or restructure the CMHC, all to help cool down the housing market. Now, most immigrants, when they come to this country, they settle in the big cities. However, that has a spillover effect on the demand in housing in other areas of the country, including Parry Sound-Muskoka. So that's our approach to the housing crisis. We also want to create a business environment where developers, builders would be better able to build housing at a more affordable price. We want to let the public or the private sector lead the way on this issue. Now, public finances are in a disastrous state right now because of tax and spend policies of Liberals, for instance. So all this debts and deficits are just deferred taxes on future generations. So we want to eliminate corporate welfare. We want to reduce business taxes to spur growth in the business sector, especially the small to medium-sized business. We want to also reduce personal income taxes as well, so that individuals have more money to spend. So that's, again, we want to let the private sector lead the way on this by creating a good tax environment for investment and for hiring. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic and these lockdowns, they just hurt business big time, and they also have an effect on people's mental health. So we would repeal vaccine mandates at the federal level. We would also put an end to a vaccine passport for international travel. From our end, from the Canadian government's point of view, we'd also oppose vaccine mandates by provinces, by funding challenges, legal challenges to these, or by supporting legal challenges to these measures. The pandemic. Thing is, people can get vaccinated, and if you're vaccinated, then you should have no fear about being around the unvaccinated people. Okay, so if they don't work, then why are they being mandated in certain sectors of for instance, healthcare sector? For instance, federal government wants to have it for all their employees. So either the vaccines work or they don't. If they don't work, they should not be mandated. So people that have been vaccinated, again, they should have nothing to fear about being around non-vaccinated people. Same thing with masks and hand sanitizers. If these measures are effective at protecting you from COVID-19 and reducing the spread, then there should be no need for lockdowns of businesses. They're very costly, very damaging to business. So either these measures work or they don't. If they don't work, we should not be using them. So, and that's, so we got to get rid of that. Those are our plans on those three issues.
Okay, Jim, thanks so much. We have a question now from Rupert Kindersley, Executive Director from the Georgian Bay Association. The Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement has identified many priorities that the Canadian and American federal governments should address to improve and protect water quality. Many concerns have been raised that more needs to be done to prevent harmful chemicals and plastics from entering the Great Lakes. Do you support increased action and funding to address those threats? We'll begin with Mark Mantha. You're muted, Mark.
Why is it the one simplest thing I can't get used to? Yes, most definitely I would support that. Now, the thing about mitigating the climate crisis is that when you are shifting resources from those things that make it worse to things that mitigate and fix the climate crisis, that's budget neutral at the same time. So much of what we do and human activity has such an impact on our waters and our lands. Just the simple fact that you think about the billions of people, when you do your laundry, for example, all those microfibers and everything that are getting into the water have a tremendous impact. There's so much that we need to do and do immediately, but at the same time, understand that mitigating the climate crisis has huge opportunities for prosperity and shifting, again, you know exactly what I'm going to say. Thank you.
Okay, to Giovanni. Giovanni, do you support increased actions and funding to address the threats of harmful chemicals and plastics from entering the Great Lakes?
Yeah, the Liberal government has invested a lot and has improved the environment when it comes to protecting the water and the lakes and the oceans. We've been doing a lot, and we will only continue if the Liberal government gets re-elected. We will continue invest even more. I don't have numbers because I'm on the road to canvas, but I can provide them and send them to you if you want. But I know that we have a plan for the environment that is very, very detailed and very clear, and I think the best we can have, and so we continue improve our environment, and we are aware that it's a crisis. We know that some of our opponents don't believe that we have a climate crisis, but from a long time we've been, staying hard, and we've been investing in the climate change. So we have to keep working hard and mitigate even more emissions and get to net zero by 2050. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Heather Hay, the question is, do you support increased action and funding to address threats to the Great Lakes in terms of harmful chemicals and plastics entering the lakes?
That's a no-brainer, of course. Of course, we're dependent on the Great Lakes for, Canada is the caretaker for a large percentage of the world's clean, fresh water. And it's our responsibility to make sure that it is safe and protected for future generations.
Okay, thank you. Jim, do you want to answer the same question? Do you support increased action and funding to address threats to the Great Lakes?
Well, we would support regulations around water quality and water safety and pollution, but we're all for smaller government and less government involvement in people's lives. No, not the funding for it. Leave that to the private sector to develop cleaner products. Okay.
Sorry, I muted myself because I have a puppy and the puppy was barking. So we have another question in terms of gun control. So the Liberal Party has a platform on gun control. Giovanni, would you like to tell us what that is?
Yes, the re-elected Liberal government is not going to tolerate, the use of, the big assault arms. So we have implemented on May 1st, 2020. We have implemented a legislation that prohibits over 1,500 models of assault style firearms. So we will continue to watch very closely because we need to have communities that are free from that kind of threat, because violence is something we have to fight very strongly.
Okay, thank you. Mark, what is your party's position on gun control? You're muted. I'm sorry.
I guess that's just going to become part of my charm. When it comes to criminal activity and getting those guns out of the hands of criminals in whatever way possible, that's absolutely legitimate and necessary, but we all need to remember that for a lot of families, it's about food security. And when they get a deer in the freezer, that's their protein for the winter. So be careful that any change does not interfere with the good people behaving responsibly. And as long as nothing is taken away from the citizens of Parry Sound-Muskoka or anywhere throughout the country and rural areas with any proposed firearm legislation.
Okay, Jim Toole, what's your stance on gun control?
I'm happy you asked. Okay. This is an issue that's really dear to my heart as well. Okay. I'm a licensed firearm owner and a licensed hunter here in Ontario. I can tell you firsthand that anybody that has a firearms license has to go through a very stringent process to get one. Okay. They do an extensive background check on you. You have to complete courses on firearm safety, firearms handling, storage of firearms, and ammunition. And once you got your license, you have to get it renewed every 5 years. You go through the same process again, or not the entire process again, but you have to fill out the application to renew your license, and do a background check on you again. And also too, your any contact with police is run against the firearms database. So we're the safest group of people that own a firearm. Firearm legislation by the Liberals is targeting the wrong people. Go after the criminals that use guns illegally and possess them illegally. Seal up the border. Prevent illegal firearms from coming across the border from the U.S. in particular. That's my position on it. That's the party's position on it.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Heather Hay, what is your position on gun control?
The NDP's position on gun control is essentially we need to get the assault weapons off our streets. They are the biggest risk to our communities. It's not the hunters who are regulated. It is those who have the assault weapons that are the biggest threat. And part of that includes stopping the number of illegal firearms that are coming across from the border, because down south, they aren't required to go through the same processes that we do have here in Canada.
Okay, thank you, Heather. So going back to the Great Lakes, Rupert Kindersley has a follow-up question. Action Plan 2030 to protect the Great Lakes has proposed that Canada should increase its funding for the Great Lakes in line with the US. Do you support the proposals in this action plan? Rupert Kindersley, can you tell us whose action plan is this? Action Plan 2030.
Okay, this is a consortium. It's led by Gord Miller, who is the previous Environment Commissioner of Ontario. It's a consortium of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. I don't know if you know who they are, but that's the municipalities around the Great Lakes on both sides of the border. So they're quite central in it. The Council for the Great Lakes region, a chap called Mark Fisher heads that up. He's another mover and shaker behind this one. There are a few other participants, but those are really the main two. They've got a pretty impressive panel of experts that have put this together and have made this request to the federal government. The essence of it is to increase funding from the Canadian government to match what the US is putting in. Just so that you understand this, the US is currently putting in around 360 million a year. Canada's around 30. And it's got nothing to do with the usual 10-to-1 ratio. It is to do with the length of the respective shorelines and the number of people who live on those shores in the Great Lakes on both sides of the border. Canada has been woefully inadequate in its funding for decades, 40 years maybe. And with climate change impacts, with extreme water levels coming at us, which is really one of the backbones of this action plan, the main issue that they're concerned with. The feeling is that it's time to step up and start matching what the US is doing, because we're going to need to.
Okay. Let's begin. We certainly know who Mr. Miller is. He ran for the Green Party last time around, and he was on one of our calls, which was lovely of him to take part. It was on our environmental town hall. So, Mark Mantha, Green Party. Then let's begin with you. Should Canada match the states in funding this proposal?
That sounds perfectly legitimate to me, and everything in principle. And actually, if you could contact me afterwards, I'd like to talk to you and discuss this a little bit further if it's convenient.
And that ask is to Rupert, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, fill us in. Let us know how that goes.
Yeah, Pamela, and how to contact me? Parry Sound-Muskoka at greenparty.ca.
Okay, thank you.
Put my email address in the chat for you.
Okay, perfect. Jim Toole, I think I know what your answer is going to be, but let us know. Would you support Canada matching the funding from the US?
Well, the PBC doesn't really have a specific policy on that issue, as far as I know. However, again, we're against larger government. We're for smaller government and reduce spending on government programs. So that's all I can say about that. In terms of climate change, we're going to withdraw from the Paris Accord to get rid of the carbon tax. However, that doesn't mean that people, individuals, cannot reduce their own carbon footprint by acting responsibly to their own lives. For instance, I would gladly pay more money for a product made here in Canada and support my neighbors for a well-made Canadian product and have one imported overseas, say from a country like China, for instance, a long ways away, perhaps cheaper prices, but look at the carbon emissions that were produced to get it from over there to over here. You can also reduce your demand on things. I have few toys in my life, as I say. Just live a simple life. Reduce your demand on the environment in particular. So shift the emphasis to the individual instead of expensive government programs forcing people to do this. We're all for freedom, personal responsibility, fairness, and respect. So again, we don't have to have the government tell us what to do. We can act on our own initiative.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Giovanni, what do you think? Would the Liberal Party match funding to support this Great Lakes project?
Yeah, obviously we support the Great Lakes. And so again, I don't have the numbers on me, but overall, the Liberal team knows that we must fight climate change in order to grow the economy, and we invest in the green economy. We continue to price the pollution across the country and ensure Canadians are better off. So we will make zero emission vehicles more affordable and accessible to even more Canadians through 5,000 rebates for purchasing a vehicle and building even more charging stations. So we have many programs, concrete programs that we put in place and really continue to fight very hard in order to make sure that climate change is improving in a few years and get to the target of zero emissions, as I said, by 2050. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Rupert, you have the candidates' answers. I know that you'll be keeping an eye on this. Maybe you could.
You didn't let me speak.
Oh, Heather. I'm sorry, Heather.
You missed me.
Hi, Heather.
Although I don't really have an answer because I'm not familiar enough about this program to know exactly what and who it involves on principle. It sounds like it fits within the NDP's commitment to clean water and protecting the environment. I don't know if you can mute whoever's screen keeps coming up there. And then before we took any specific action, so I wouldn't want to admit or confirm that we would meet the U.S. funding levels without consulting our Indigenous communities and making sure that that is the priority for the funds that we have in terms of protecting the environment. So it would definitely be something I would look into more of, but I don't have that information.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Rupert, we would love to hear from you a year from now when we have the new government and we discover if the new government is supporting this plan or not. We can revisit this. So thank you for bringing it to us. We have, I think this is going to be our last question. What is your party doing to reduce or assist the amount of our fellow citizens from utilizing the food banks in our communities here in Muskoka? So I think what we're talking about here is food security. So what would you do? What would your party do to support food security here in Parry Sound-Muskoka? We know that in Parry Sound-Muskoka, we make less money than the rest of the province. We have a lot of folks living in poverty. We have a lot of folks relying on services to be able to have houses, to be able to have food and shelter. And often folks are having to decide between food and shelter, particularly in these upcoming winter months when they have heating to pay for. So do I put food on the table or do I heat my house? Do I buy my prescription drugs that I need for my health or provide dental care for my mom who's ailing, or do I put food on the table? So what would we do? Heather, since we've got you front and center and I don't want to miss you, what would you do about food security for the people of Parry Sound-Muskoka?
I think one of the key issues is to make sure that everyone has a living wage. And part of that would be raising the federal minimum wage to $20 an hour and keeping it indexed. Because that said, I know that doesn't necessarily relate to the provincial level, but having the federal bar set at that level will raise the wages provincially and throughout the province. Part of our main part of our plan is Pharmacare and extending dental, vision, mental health supports, and prescription medications as part of expanding the current medical benefits so that those expenses are covered and not there is more money available for food. And putting caps on internet and making sure that it's recognized as a essential service, and stop the gouging. So anything we can do to reduce the costs to things that individuals have to pay, as well as ensuring that the people have a livable income, in terms of disability benefits and other supports.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Giovanni, what would you do to increase food security for folks in Parry Sound-Muskoka? Oh, and I muted you because of...
I will focus on creating good jobs that can pay a living. That's my number one priority. And other than that, for people like seniors, I will improve their, their services. Because the Liberal government has always supported people throughout the pandemic, and those who lost their jobs had a check because we knew that they had to survive, and we supported them. We continue to support those who will be having, troubles getting, a job. But my priority is gonna be to invest enough in order to create good jobs, the jobs that can pay, a good salary. And so, and also provide, more support, financial support for those who rely on, medications because they have health conditions. We always support those people.
Okay, thank you, Giovanni. All right, so Jim, you've said repeatedly, less government, less services for folks. What do you have to say then to people in Parry Sound-Muskoka who are relying on food banks and who rely on help to put food on the table?
Well, it's a sad state of affairs when you have to rely upon food banks for your survival. I agree completely. What we have to do is a lack of economic opportunity in the riding. We have to have more employment opportunities available for everybody in this riding so that they can look after themselves. We need well-paying jobs available. The way to do that, from our point of view, is to reduce government or reduce business taxes, reduce the size of government, reduce personal tax levels, to encourage a more friendly business environment so that businesses are able to expand and hire more staff. People have more money in the pocket to spend on things, and also try to attract, by working with the local levels of government here, attract new businesses to this area. So besides expanding existing businesses, creating the environment so that existing businesses here in this riding can expand, attract new businesses to the area. But it has to be a business-friendly environment. The private sector creates wealth, and they have to lead the way on this. But if they're over-hampered with the regulation and taxes and stuff, then that's not a business-friendly environment. So that's my position on it.
People's Party of Canada.
Yeah.
I'm a person living in Parry Sound-Muskoka, and I rely on my government assistance in order to have shelter and in order to have food. People's Party of Canada is elected on Monday. Do I continue to will I still have that money, or what do I do 3 months from now?
Yeah, we're not going to cut it off right away. It's going to be for the real disadvantaged, the real vulnerable people. We'll continue to have these social safety nets in place, what we want to do is try to create an environment, business-wise and individual-wise, through lower taxes, so that people can go out and work and make their own living instead of having to rely upon the government for their survival. That's what we'd like to see happen, but it has to happen through lower taxes and a friendlier business environment. But we're not going to leave the vulnerable in our society, leave them behind and not think about them. So I also encourage everybody to stay in school as long as possible, get a good education, and be able to get a good, well-paying job, either in a professional sector or in skilled trades or something. The more education you have, the more opportunities that are going to be available for you. So that's on the individual to do that for themselves. Okay, so personal responsibility. All right, but again, we're not going to just leave the very vulnerable in our society high and dry. But so not come Monday if we're elected, that everybody's got to panic. All right, but that's our philosophy, and that's our approach to these issues.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Mark, food security.
Look at that, I unmuted myself before starting. There's a whole section of that platform on guaranteed livable income in the Green Party website. And I'm going to quote from the platform right here. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed how many Canadians still lack a basic safety net to protect them in times of financial difficulty. And in Canada, one of the richest countries, 10% of people live in poverty and do not have access to a standard living adequate health and well-being. It's a right that is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And poverty is very expensive. The Canadian government spends over $20 billion in employment insurance and transfers to low-income families per year. So poverty is also the largest social determinant of health, impacting educational outcomes, crime, and treatment within the criminal justice system. So Canada has never succeeded in designing a benefit system that covers everyone and in all circumstances of need. So given the virtual limitless number of different employment, unemployment, and underemployment circumstances in which Canadians find themselves, it's unlikely that any piecemeal approach will ever succeed in providing comprehensive coverage for all. And at one time, we had a pilot project here in Ontario, and that was the provincial government, where it was a guaranteed livable income pilot project. Then another government comes in and takes that away. So you can imagine a student that had the opportunity now to go to school, to improve themselves, to be a more prosperous participant in the economy, and have that pulled out from under them without any kind of accommodation for canceling that program. That's cruel.
Mm-hmm.
So much of this just really has to do with thinking not even outside of the box. Take the box and get rid of it, and let's start and get this right. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do encourage folks to look on our website for our stories on food security. It's very clear that the people who are most in need of assistance and the people who are lining up at the food banks are children and our seniors, our most vulnerable people. So there's probably very little that's more important in this election than food security, housing, climate, Indigenous rights. There's always so much to do. Okay, so at 12:49, I think we do have to round it up. I'm going to give each of the candidates 2 minutes to wind up your position today. And this is the last opportunity on this platform for you to speak to the voters before they go to the polls in 4 days. So let's begin with Giovanni. Giovanni?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, as we said before, and from what I hear when I'm canvassing, I'm talking with people here in Parry Sound-Muskoka is that the bigger issue is the housing crisis. So if I get elected on the 21st, we start, talking with the people in the community, see how we can work together. Those people are going to be probably people who work for the municipality and also people who work for the provincial services. And so, for example, the Ministry of Housing. And so I will start the very first day and they talk about how we can really start right away, because it's not acceptable to see that a country, developed country, a G7 country like Canada has this issue. We have many people who are now homeless, and they don't have where to go. They don't have a roof. So if nothing is done, probably we lose many other people besides the pandemic. The people we lost because of the pandemic, and also I will work with the people who work in the health industry to make sure that we keep and finish the fight against COVID-19. And in this district, I also learned that we have a lot of mental health issues. And so I will make sure that I learn more about that, because there are probably people who are really dedicated for those kind of issues. And so I will make sure that I meet with those professionals and start, trying to find a way I can get means to provide to those people. I know that there is a budget for that kind of situations, and I know that the federal government has named the mental issue a health issue. So I'm aware that it exists from people I talked to in the Parry Sound-Muskoka, and I will start working in that sense to remediate the situation. And the housing situation, as I said, is going to be about trying to implement the small houses in order for us to see how people who are not wealthy can afford to own a house. And the economy is going to be also my priority, because we both know that this pandemic has affected our economy. And so it's going to be about investing in creating jobs that can pay a living. So I don't think that I can tell you all of the measures that I will adopt to be able to solve all the problems that I hear among people who live in this community. But I will work with whoever is going to be ready to work right away so that we can improve the lives of people in Parry Sound-Muskoka. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jim, would you like to wind up your position for us?
Yes, I would. So again, People's Party of Canada is all about less government intrusion into the individual's life. We're more for people taking charge of their own affairs. We want to create conditions where businesses have a better tax environment in which to set up shop and to expand, so that people can be encouraged to work and have the opportunity to work. And create wealth that way. The private sector creates wealth. Okay, we're against the vaccine mandate. Okay, either the vaccines work or they don't, but they should not be forced upon people. Vaccinated people should have nothing to fear about being around unvaccinated people. We would end the lockdowns and all these draconian measures that were taken. Either these measures work or they don't. So the hand sanitizers work or the masks work or they don't. We do not believe in lockdowns. We believe in getting business back up and running so that people can get their lives back to normal as soon as possible. So basically, that's our approach. Our beliefs are freedom, so freedom of choice, freedom of speech, not government censorship on the internet, which hasn't already been covered by the criminal code. We're all for fairness and respect. So that's our position. So that's what we'd like to see happen. And I'm in this election. The only reason I'm running as a candidate, I'm not in it for the prestige, the pension, the money or anything. I'm only in it because I'm concerned and alarmed of the direction this country's going. And I just want to do my part to PPC's voice. I presented our platform to the electorate. That is why I'm running. I love my country, and I'm really scared for its future.
Thank you, Jim.
You bet.
Mark Mantha, would you like to wind up for today?
Yes. We can put the brakes on the climate crisis and finally have safe housing for everyone. And if you resolve housing, you're going to improve mental health with better food security and reduce pressures on healthcare. We are one of the poorest ridings in Ontario, and economic policy for these last 50 years has not improved our quality of life. And since people are more than a number or a statistic, it's ethical, it's humanitarian, and it's kind. The budget for this is by shifting resources from programs and subsidies that cause the climate crisis to programs that save us from it. And the solutions can be budget neutral, and that should make fiscal conservatives very happy. And with the same strategy, we can create millions of well-paying, stable jobs to stimulate your regional businesses and enterprise for a prosperous, healthy, and inclusive recovery. I'll be glad to be your voice in Ottawa.
Thank you, Mark. And final word today goes to Heather Hay for the New Democratic Party.
Thank you so much, Pamela. And I really do appreciate you taking the time to coordinate this series of town halls so we have a chance to meet the people of Muskoka, Parry Sound over the last 3 weeks, I guess it's been. And hopefully I'll be able to meet with you again next week as the next member of parliament for Parry Sound-Muskoka. We all sit here, all of us here are in a very privileged situation. And we've talked about some of the issues, and oftentimes they focus a lot on the economics. And I do want to draw attention to that there are serious issues that have not been raised during this campaign. We have not talked about the missing and murdered Indigenous women. We have not talked about mold on Indigenous in Indigenous communities. I keep coming back to it, that reconciliation is a very personal as well as a systemic issue. And each of us needs to do the work to decolonize and remove those racist and patriarchal ways of thinking that have caused so much harm in our communities. And I think part of what we need to do moving forward is to do that work personally, so that then when we meet with our Indigenous neighbors and move forward, we can do it in a good way, do the work in a good way. And I said in the debate that one of the questions was, what is the first thing you would do if elected? And my answer was, I would take tobacco to each of the communities, Indigenous communities in Muskoka, Parry Sound, and meet with the elders in those communities and make sure that their voices are what I take forward into Ottawa. So I would like to thank everybody for their participation for the whole process of this, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you so much, Heather. And what Heather is alluding to is that I have asked the candidates, if they win, will they do a one-on-one next week at our town hall and talk about what they're going to do over the next, hopefully, 4 years. For me, I love it when we have 4 years between our elections. So hopefully we will meet with you next week, Thursday at noon, with the winner of this election. Please do get out and vote. We have to understand with great gratitude that our country, part of what makes our country great is that we do have this electoral system, and that we're not living in one of the many places in the world where folks don't have the ability to form their governments. So please do vote. And we will see you next Thursday at noon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.